We are now live.
Good evening. Thank you all for attending today's meeting of the Santa Rosa City School Board. I call this meeting to order Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. This evening's meeting is a continuance of our March 9th, 2022 meeting, and its sole purpose is to complete orders of business from that meeting. Although the full meeting agenda is posted for the public, tonight's continuance meeting picks up where we left off on March 9th, agenda item E6. Before we continue, I would like to open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could all please rise, unmute for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you all. Okay, we are, as I mentioned, we are going to pick up where we left off from our March 9th meeting, agenda item E6, resolution number 2021-2240. The board will consider approval of resolution number 2021-2240, selecting the proposal from Christofferson Builders for the sale of the Fir Ridge property. Deputy Superintendent will present agenda item E6 to the board for consideration. I'm going to turn it over to you, Deputy Superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening, President Sheffield, Superintendent Janelle, members of the board, and the community that's watching. As President Sheffield said, we are presenting resolution number 2021/22-40 to select Christofferson Builders for the purchase of the Fir Ridge property. If you recall, at the February 9th, 2022 meeting, we presented their proposal. At that point, we had to wait a minimum of 30 days before the board could select that proposal. We did find that the proposal was fair, and we'd like to move forward with the process of selecting Christofferson Builders, where we will bring back the timeline and goal is to bring it back on the 30th with a purchase and sale agreement with Christofferson Builders to move forward on this project, where they can then start their due diligence period and then go through the process of purchasing the property. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I turn it back to President Sheffield.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Edson. Questions from the board? All right, seeing none, this is an action item. We're going to go to public comment on the agenda item E6 only. So we could open this up to the public.
If there are any members of the public that would like to comment on item E6, please raise your hand at this time. And it looks like we have a hand raised from Ralph Brown, the Ralph Brown Act. If you could please state your name for the record. Hello. The person who gave the name Ralph Brown Act, could you please state your name for the record? Or unmute. Okay, we're going to move on. Next is UCP. Could you please state your name for the record?
Hi, yeah, my name is Sheila Walker, and I just want people to know that a UCP is a uniform complaint where students, you can report students have been discriminated, harassed, intimidated, or bullied regarding the mask guidelines and what is happening in our school district. So please look up the UCP and go ahead, parents, and let this board and the teachers union know that our students cannot be discriminated against, harassed,
Ms. Walker, this is for item E6. It's a resolution involving a sale of a property. So I'm going to see if there are no other comments. We'll try Ralph Brown again in case Ralph Brown was really wanting to comment on E6. Are you there? And President Sheffield, it looks like that person is not unmuting for some reason. So
All right. Well, thank you, Beth. Are there any other members of the public, or is that all of us? All right. We're returning back to the board. This is a action item. So returning to the board for discussion, further questions, or a motion.
I'd like to move to approve resolution number 2021-22-40, selecting Christofferson Builders for the purchase of the Fur Ridge property.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by trustee De La Cruz, seconded by trustee Flores for resolution number 2021-22-40, selecting the proposal for the Christofferson Builders for the sale of the Fur Ridge property. We are ready for a vote.
Director De La Cruz,
Aye.
Director Flores,
Aye.
Director Manieri,
Aye.
Director Fong,
Aye.
Director McCormick,
Aye.
Director Medina,
Aye.
President Sheffield.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you. We're moving on to agenda item E7, A through G completion improvement grant plan. The board will receive information on the A through G completion improvement grant plan. It's my understanding that there has been some additional information from SCO in regards to these grant funds, as well as ongoing work from the district to sync data from state reporting with our own internal system. So E6 is a discussion item that will come back for further discussion and action in April. But at this time, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Armstrong, who will present agenda item E7 for the board for discussion. Dr. Armstrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you and good evening, President Sheffield, trustees, Superintendent Tranel, members of Santa Rosa City Schools and guests. My name is Kimberly Armstrong, and I am here representing Educational Services as the Associate Superintendent. I will share my screen now so that I can walk through part one of a three-part presentation. Oh, let's see. Sorry, while I cue this up. There we go. All right. Oops, wrong button. There we go. Okay, so I am before you to present for your discussion the A through G completion improvement grant plan that was scheduled for March 9th and continued to tonight. Just know that I bring forth this item under the two priorities, which are, of course, life-ready learners and equity and excellence. So the A through G completion grant is to further our reach in terms of making sure that every student is prepared for UC and CSU admission. This is just an information slide. I know that you all are familiar with A through G, but sometimes it helps to see a graphic. And if we look at the requirements lined up A through G, hence the name A through G, we see the required number of years and the subject that students must earn a C grade or higher to be eligible for admission, among some other things, but 15-year-long high school courses, out of the 22 that they take over 4 years. So just to give some context, I'm presenting the 5-year cohort snapshot, the number of students who were in the cohort, and then the number of graduates who met UC and CSU requirements and the percentage You're able to see that percentage as it compares to, as that number is compared to both Sonoma County and the state. I have another slide that shows you the demographic data broken down by race. I don't know if that's in your packet, as we had some updates. So I have a new slide indicated in the top right corner. I'll just pause there for you so you're able to see that. And for those not familiar, if there's an asterisk, that number was not large enough to be calculated on the data system used by the state. Okay, so obviously you can tell by the numbers that there is some significant need, not just in Santa Rosa, but across the county and state, which is why California has moved forward with allocating some funds for A through G completion. And so our allocation, it's a revised amount. We got an updated number about a week ago before this document, or after this document was published. So the new revised number is the number that you see, 1,409,215. And that's spread across 4 years. So from fall 2022 through spring 2026. So 4 academic years. So that amount divided over 4 years. Oops, sorry, I moved my thing. So the purpose, of course, is to increase the number of students who graduate with A through G eligibility. And this grant serves students grades 9 through 12. So one of the things that is a requirement is that we do a public presentation for the board on the amount allocated and a potential planned use of funds. So the reason why we have the word potential is that it's just that. We will be spending the next several weeks collecting data. We've already actually started that process with SRTA, and we plan on having some dedicated time to have conversations on thoughts from not only our internal stakeholders, but our external as well. But I can tell you that there are some themes that have come up amongst some groups so far. And while some of these activities we do, the purpose of these grant funds will help us reach even further, and perhaps in some of these areas go even deeper. And so we are anxiously waiting the feedback from our stakeholders internally and externally. But just to share briefly, so for students, I'll just pull out a couple, increased credit recovery opportunities, just supporting students with not just recovering credit, but making sure that those grades are C or higher, because we know that that is what makes them A through G eligible. And even though D will get them credit, we really want our students to pass with at least a C so that we can increase that number. On the school site staff, just professional development geared towards improving A through G. It's just this evening, we had our first professional development committee with administrators and teachers and a classified representative talking about PD that is responsive and engaging and just hearing their desires. And so as we continue those monthly professional development planning meetings, we'll be able to drill down on specifics that teachers are wanting to see and that we've identified as a need area based on data. And then another example for district is expanding access to A through G coursework. So that could be increasing the co-taught classes to support students. And this is including our students with an IEP and our students who are emergent bilingual students. Again, is just going in more detailed on the professional development. And I think I spoke a little bit to that, but just to see some actuals. There's the AP training and conferences that are connected, doing some lesson study around math, some of that articulation, not only that K through 12 articulation, but the horizontal across different departments as well. And then student supports, tutoring is something that has definitely emerged as a need. We have been approached by some vendors who offer district-wide tutoring that's web-based. It's an intriguing idea to think that every student in our system could have access to quality tutoring, and that's documented and then it's tracked and that information is then returned. So just an idea of something that's out there. We are appreciative and love our AVID model. And so any opportunities to increase AVID and use some of those strategies across all grade levels is, you know, the goal of AVID as an organization, and certainly ours as well, but that will take an investment with time and resources. And then increased access and resources. So just strengthening the CTE pathway. I know you all heard with the design work that was happening and continues to happen at a couple of our schools. That doesn't limit the work that's happening with CTE. And so having that opportunity to increase courses and put additional resources there. We've started some work with work-based learning. Having the opportunity to increase that would be powerful. And just wherever we can extend and further our reach, and that we're responsive to the needs of students, community, and teachers on some of their ideas and suggestions, I think will help us move more swiftly towards those goals. And so, of course, part of the plan is our use and then how we monitor to make sure that we're meeting those goals. And so early intervention for ninth graders not on track, having a data system that allows us to see those quarter grades even before they are finalized, so we're able to track. And we've already done some work as a team on identifying a data dashboard and hope to bring that before you in the coming weeks or in the next month. But we're excited about an early warning data system that will return data in a way that helps us be responsive and not lag. 4-year plan at all grade levels. So our new student information system, ARIES, has the ability to record in, or at least be the holding place for 4-year plans for our students. And so we want to review that and see if there's an opportunity there to have those established starting with the 9th grade, and then make sure that it's regularly reviewed each year. Tracking the percentage of students who are enrolled in A through G courses, and also the work that we do to communicate out about A through G and making sure that our families are aware. You know, we actually have a survey that's going out to the community for our LCAP revision from the matrix in action. And a couple of questions that are in that survey is families and their information and how familiar they are with A through G requirements and the information that they're receiving. So even though we have some A through G completion survey questions that we're putting out, we're also looking at other opportunities to collect information about how and what families know in regards to A through G, so that we could have that wraparound support. And then, of course, families and students accessing and engaged in the work that's being done in college and the career centers. And that work is coordinated in educational services. And so I'm really excited about the work that one of our directors is leading. I don't know why my brain just froze there, but she knows who she is. And again, finally, just ending with, like I said, we have a survey going out that's just specific on the A through G, using that opportunity to build some knowledge base around it, and then collecting some feedback for our internal and external stakeholders. And then we look to then bring this back for further discussion, and then eventually for the public hearing and then approval. So with that, are there any questions?
Great, thank you, Dr. Armstrong. As Dr. Armstrong mentioned, board, this is the beginning we are going to have this come back for further discussion and action as well. But at this time, are there questions from the board? I see Trustee Flores' hand raised.
And then just, can I say before Trustee Flores speaks
Absolutely.
that my college and career coordinator, Debbie Cordoza, is doing amazing work. And yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
Shout out to Debbie. All right. All right, Trustee Flores.
Thank you, Dr. Strong, for that presentation. So the one thing I'd like to see here, well, my question is, has there been articulation with the incoming 8th graders or the incoming 9th graders or the feeder schools to make sure that we identify early predictors of, or identify students early enough to make sure that they receive the scaffolding that we are predicting to do in 9th grade? I mean, didn't see that in here. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I can certainly, and I'm gonna also take notes on things that you want to see. I can definitely say that our high schools have been out for the articulation meetings at the middle school. I can bring back and report on specific activities that they're doing to build that understanding with A through G, but I don't have specific activities in hand, but the articulation, which triggers our registration process, has been going on for the last, what are we in March? So it's been going on for the last 2 months.
And then the other question is, what are the different math levels that students are placed in 9th grade? Do you know that?
Yeah, so right now, these are, of course, courses that are board approved. There is the Math 1, which is that
Algebra.
traditional algebra. And then we have a Math 1A that some students are able to access. And that is a board approved course as well. And what that is, Math 1A, is the Math 1 course with the front loaded concepts and some opportunities to build in some intervention and prevention. So those are the 2 courses. And then of course for entry level, but then some students who we do have advanced math in the middle school. So for students who are already in a Math 1 course in middle school, will then be able to go right into Math 2.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question in this, and I don't know if maybe Director Fong has the same idea on this, is to make sure that we identify those students that may need the extra scaffolding early enough. Yeah. So that way, because we know that math is one of those gatekeepers, right? IM3 or advanced algebra, right? And one of the things that happens and that I see, at least with my students, is that if they don't have that algebraic sort of foundational skills, by the time they reach IM3, they either don't do it, don't sign up for it, they opt to do something else. So I like to see more of a early intervention program to make sure the students have those strong math skills. So that way they feel confident when they're taking that IM3 or that advanced algebra trade class. And in terms of support courses at the 9th grade level, do we have anything in that regard for math for our 9th graders?
Yeah, not at this time. I know those are traditionally known as those double dip type courses, but no, not at this time. It's been Math 1 and Math 1A, which is used for students that need that foundational ground built up a little more. But I can say, let me just respond. So I sit on the Math Council, and that's basically the department chairs from all of our middle and high schools. And one of the things that we've been talking about is putting together a math plan, and making sure that we're looking at the different supports and ways in which we can intervene with students. I think even looking at the tutoring as a resource for all of our families to be able to have access to. And even in summer, we're having conversations about a robust plan. And I'm excited that we have the Math TOSA position advertised, and we'll be filling that role to have someone come in and help us be where that's their core work, is math, and math specifically in Santa Rosa across secondary, K-12 really, but a specific focus on secondary.
So I know there are certain negotiations happening right now for next year in terms of the bill schedule, right? It is adding an extra period, something that has been looked at in terms of making sure that students who may need the extra, support, one, get the class so they don't end up taking, all core classes and not an elective course. And have we started the process of developing courses that will support our students who may need the extra scaffolding?
Yeah, those are excellent questions. So first, to the first question, I would say that has not been a part of our conversation yet regarding a 6 period versus a 7 period, or what that may or may not do. The second part is, yes, there is some conversation around a course that then moves past the Math 1A, or sort of that in between, that can help. Unfortunately, when you look at our numbers, we have a 3-year math sequence in Santa Rosa. Of course, there's the 4th year for that elective, but that graduation requirement of 3. And though it's a 3-year graduation requirement, many of our students are taking 4 years to complete those 3 years. So we're really thinking thoughtfully about what we can do to support students in the process, because you're right. I mean, math is the #1 predictor for whether a student completes high school or not. So it's.
Thank you. And lastly, the UC system came up with a new math sequence, an acceptable math sequence that includes IM1, IM2, and instead of IM3, because that's the pre-calculus, calculus-based math, right? That not everyone's going to be an engineer, and not everyone needs that. It's IM1, IM2, and then statistics, right? Statistics is something that we all need. I mean, in the humanities. So has that conversation started in the high school level to make sure that we have enough or access to that?
Yes, absolutely. And remember, we also have statistics for social justice as well. So it's good that the UCs are catching up with the rest of the world in terms of 3rd year maths being more applied and hands-on in some cases, and also still available for students that want to go on to trigonometry.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's it. That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good questions, Trustee Flores. Trustee De La Cruz?
Sorry, having a hard time unmuting myself. Thank you so much for the presentation. I had a few questions.
Sure.
One, I noticed that we haven't disaggregated the data in terms of outcomes by race and ethnicity. And I think that's a really critical thing to look at as we're looking at, how to be culturally responsive and the kinds of supports that we create for kids to really understand those outcomes right now. I also think that this is a question that would help us to understand if there are particular needs in particular schools that are different from other schools. And so I'd really love, to make sure that information is being considered as we think about resource allocation for the kinds of supports needed at different sites. So I'm wondering if that's going to come back at some point, or if that's going to be in your decision-making and resource allocation decisions.
Yes, so that will be the second presentation. Will be a little more robust with data and sites and the plan use, and hopefully we'll even be able to have some percentages in there on the focus too. Okay,
great. And I think the thing that I really want to make sure that underpins that understanding of those, the presentations around differential outcomes around race or ethnicity is recognizing that we are all accountable for those outcomes. And so, whenever we have these conversations, I think it's going to be really important for us to understand kind of, the actors, the challenge, and the folks who are experiencing that disproportionality all as mirrors of themselves in our systems together. So there's no monsters, there's no scapegoats. There's no kind of blame or shame. I think especially for those kids, or those school sites that are really experiencing higher challenges. And so, in this, I think the question that I want to pose is, how do we make sure that we're taking responsibility for what happened, right? As we're looking at this data and these outcomes, and then what are the things that we need to do in order to transform the conditions so that those outcomes that we know currently are happening that are disproportional are not going to happen again as we invest this money. So I'm looking forward to that data coming back. Thank you so much for that. The other question that I have that really kind of gets at the ways in which our institutions operate at a structural level is that I understand at Santa Rosa City Schools that we have a kind of a placement test that happens in 6th grade on one day in 6th grade that really kind of sets the path for whether or not a 7th grader gets into honors math. And then that sets the framework for what happens all the way through high school, right? So there's this one day in 6th grade that sets the path for a child in the rest of their experience, all the way up to graduation. And so I'm just wondering, as we think about the ways in which our institutions operate in this structural way, how are we looking at, that placement decision? Are we looking at that placement decision? Is there something that is going to have us go back to that, one day in 6th grade when a kid takes a placement test?
So yes, let me respond to the first one. I would say the first question, one of the things that we feel will be a great measure and also brings in that accountability is the data dashboard. There's been a multi-department collaboration. And so once that's in place, I know we talk a lot about the lagging data, the data that comes out from the state, the annual, and we'll be able to spend a little bit more time on those leading indicators and what's changing. And if it's not, what are we going to do differently in terms of programs and services to make sure that we're moving along at a pace that we should. And I think once we're able to lead with data and be evidence informed, that will, I think, answer some of those questions around accountability and in terms of individually and then as a department. The second one is I would say that placement tests, advanced math at the middle level has definitely been a conversation that we've been having on the Math Council. And that is something that we're hoping that when I talk about that math plan, that 7 through 12, that we're examining whether there is a test or not, and how teachers are feeling about that, and is a test that is culturally responsive, and what's the research say on it, so that we'll be able to communicate to our stakeholders, both internally and externally, about what we believe about math, what the plan is for math, and how we support students when they are having adverse experiences with math. So all that to say, yes, that's a topic of conversation, and we're really looking forward into getting this TOSA hired so that we can further that work.
If I could add to the conversation as well, with the Math Placement Act of 2015, school districts then enacted the Board Policy 6152.1, which is around placement in mathematics courses. That's where there was the spur for a need for a formal placement exam. However, we can look at that policy and we can determine how we want to see the various data points for placement and make that a part of our policy.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Superintendent. I think that's really important. So,
Director De La Cruz, I'm wondering how soon or when can we implement that? Is that something that could be done where we are on the placement test this year? So,
I would like to defer to Dr. Armstrong where she's at with the work. And I think that is something that we would be poised to look at this spring when we bring some additional data discussions to you.
Yeah, I can definitely bring that back. I actually will have a meeting with the math department chairs before the next board meeting. And so we can think about that. I can tell you in my last conversation with them about placement tests, there are different there's different tools that are used in different sites. And so they all recognize that there is a need to be consistent. So we definitely need to have some conversations about math and math improvement, and we are having them.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, you took the words right out of my mouth, President Sheffield, because I do think that this feels right in, hand in hand with looking at the ways our institutions operate at a structural level. And so if we're looking across, our math systems as a whole, I think it's going to be really important to line up that work with this work because it has everything to do with A through G. And so just that timing question was exactly where I was going. I think the other question that I would also like to know is, until we change that policy, what are we doing to notify parents around the possibility of their filing waivers for their child to enter into an advanced math class in 7th grade? How are we sharing information with parents that make sure that they know that if they feel like their child has the support and the skills and what they need to really be challenged and to rise up to that challenge in 7th grade, it is not a very difficult thing to reach out to your child's counselor to request that they, be moved up to an advanced math program in 7th grade. But typically the people who know how to do that and the people who file those waivers are folks like me, right? Highly educated, folks who can navigate systems, folks who are going to advocate for their children around these, issues that in 6th grade you recognize have an impact on their high school graduation, possibilities. So I think thinking about the timeline and how we're lining up these things, it's going to be really important for also us to be practical and letting folks know you can file for a waiver. Your child doesn't have to be locked out of a Math 1 or an honors math class in 7th grade if you do the following things, right? So that we're kind of doing the tweaks to the system before the system completely changes. Because I know that there are a number of parents who know how to work that system and who are doing, what they believe is the right thing for their child, because it is in many ways, helping their kid to get through those math requirements in a timely way, with very high quality teaching and, excellent supports around them at that honors level, right? The expectations are very high. And so with that comes, I think, important resources. So I would just love to make sure that we know kind of what the long-term fixes and also what the practical short-term fixes are to address those shortcomings in our systems.
Yes. And so absolutely. And I think we all know that math is, as Ben said, it's the gatekeeper course. And, I don't know if you all know that math is what I taught when I was a teacher. And I have a brother who, just really quickly, he left 8th grade, strong math skills, really wanted to be in algebra in the 9th grade. The teacher told him no. I went to that teacher and advocated on his behalf. He took a placement test and he was placed in algebra. My brother graduated with a degree in math, has taught math for over 20 years and even teaches at the college level. And so just that start to be able to take algebra in the 9th grade was transformative in his math plan. And so I just share that to say that I'm personally and professionally connected to the conversations on math, and all of the things that you talk about is definitely a part of my lens.
Thank you. I think I don't think I had any questions after that. But I am really curious to hear kind of the combination of how we're pulling together at the middle school and high school levels. And then looking forward to the disaggregated data being provided and making sure that we all are really grounded in what that means for us and what that means for our responsibility, but not necessarily where blame or shame comes into play in any way whatsoever.
I have those notes. I'll make sure I bring that back. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee De La Cruz. Trustee Fong? You are on mute.
Swear to God, this is the second time I did that today. I don't have, President Sheffield, I don't have a lot of clarifying questions, but I have a lot of kind of discussion items I'd like to us to share. So do you want to wait till after public comment on this?
Yes, we may have some public comment that might spur a little bit more discussion.
Okay.
We'll come back to you though. Trustee Medina.
There we go. My question is around, well, going along with Director De La Cruz was talking about, I think one of the important things in terms of our long-term success is really increasing the rigor of math from a very early on age. And I'm curious about, can funds from this grant be used at that level? Is it like, district-wide, both the elementary and the high school district, or is this specifically to be spent within the high school district, this grant?
Yes, specifically for 9th through 12th.
Thank you.
So if I can add to that, and that's exactly right. These funds are to be spent in 9th through 12th. And so when we look at our base funding in LCAP, and I know Dr. Armstrong can speak to this, we can utilize these funds in addition to what we've already allocated. So as we think about reaching down and talking about 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade and so forth, we can review what we currently have allocated, knowing that we have these additional funds that are going to be layered on top for high school.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Medina. I just had a couple of follow-up questions. I think there was great questions asked, and maybe I want to continue along these lines. Dr. Armstrong, you had a slide early on in the presentation that showed some of the demographics, and I know that these are changing as we're trying to get them to sync up correctly, but if you could pull that up, I don't know which. Sure. I want to say it was.
I go back to
there. Yeah. So with this slide, and then the next slide with the percentages. Oh no, that was it. That was it. Okay, I'm sorry. Really, kind of giving us a sense of where we need to give a little bit extra focus.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking at certain demographics within the district, when we're looking at percentage of Latinx, when we're looking at percentage of African American students. And so I guess what the focus of my questions are on how quickly can we act this year. We're talking about resources that are being made available to reach out to families. The expanded services. I love all the expanded services that were listed, and really trying to give you a sense of what we would like to see. For me personally, it's the focus on the early intervention for 8th and 9th graders. And I don't recall which trustee, it might have been Trustee De La Cruz who brought up advocating for the students in the families in particular, so that they have a greater, clearer understanding. And so, I would like to see a chunk of these resources going there, hand-holding, doing what it takes as these students are being identified, maybe in 7th grade, definitely by 8th grade. But, those two, and maybe, again, this is working with the math departments at each site, but wanting to see this by the end of this school year is really that soon of action. That way we are better set up for what types of interventions, what type of services we can offer throughout the summer. And so the question that I wanted to know is, where are we right now for programs this summer that are going to help these students?
Well, I think my immediate answer, my first answer would be some of the programming that we have set in place for this summer. So this is outside of the grant, the items that we're already doing to be responsive to the needs of students. We're having a conversation on, how might we be able to be creative in meeting the needs of students in passing, not just passing math, but being able to go deeper and understand specific themes and whatnot. So there's quite a bit of work. Our college and career counselors are definitely doing orientations and outreach. We have some communication that's out at the site. It's more localized right now. Other than the coordination from Director Cardoza, most of the information that is being deployed out to families and students is at the individual sites.
Okay.
And so I think with the grant, it, definitely offers that opportunity for, like I said, for us to go a little bit deeper and a little bit further in terms of how we reach out.
Great. I love that response that we're taking it further. And that's really what I'm getting at. We understand that there's, significant learning loss, especially around mathematics, but what can we do now? What can we do going into the summer months with enough advanced time to work with students, to work with families that, maybe aren't quite understanding, that need a little bit of additional hand holding. So, again, everything that trustees had said, my input is the immediacy. How quickly can we implement this year? Definitely. And I would like to see us, if we're going to come back in a couple of weeks for further discussion, to see where we are on the placement exams, a little bit more information there and what has been done to reach out with mathematics departments.
Yes.
Those are all my questions. Board members, other questions? All right, seeing none. This is a discussion item. We're going to go to public comment on agenda item E7 only.
If there are any members of the public who would like to comment on this item only, please raise your hand at this time. And Sheila Walker would like to comment.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent Trinnell and the community. I am glad to see this report on A to G. I just thought I would add some feedback regarding this information. I do agree with Director Flores that identifying students who might need additional support is extremely important. And I'll give you a little feedback on why I believe that. Tutoring is really needed and was needed in August when we started school for math. I have an 8th grader right now, so he'll be headed to high school next year, and he is not ready. In 7th grade, so last year during distance learning, his teacher did not Zoom. Seriously, did not Zoom. And when we asked the principal why my student, who already has ADHD and struggles in math, was not getting any instruction, we were told it was because the teachers were not required to teach via Zoom per their MOU. That is when I first heard those words or those letters, MOU. And that is why I always attend your meetings. So my son in 7th grade, if he was lucky, got 15 minutes of math per week. And then I'll fast forward to a comment made also by Director Flores, which I also agree with, regarding bell schedule. Fast forward, my son starts 8th grade. I had him on a wait list for a private school after the fiasco of last year. We were determined to keep our child in public school. A lot of it so that he would be around kids that we felt was more appropriate, just around a diverse group of people. We also did not plan to have to pay for private school. So fast forward, I gave up my spot that I was on a wait list for. And the very next week, this board voted to remove 4 hours a week of instruction from our middle schools. So now we're talking about adding. I would love for someone to add some hours back. My student has lost weeks and weeks and weeks of education. So my student does not have an MOU, but my family had to find a way to afford a math tutor. We've been paying a retired teacher 2 times a week, year round, since December of 2020, because he doesn't have an MOU and parents don't have a union. So I agree, tutoring is needed. It was needed to start in the fall. And my student is not a minority, and he also needs help. And I don't think that I should have to pick up an extra job because he's not a minority, because he needs to learn math too.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. And there are no other hands raised for public comment for this item.
Great, thank you. Bringing it back to the board for further discussion. Trustee Fong.
All right, thank you. So Dr. Armstrong, I thank you and your team for putting this together. You know, when the state hands out grants, it's kind of like, okay, how fast do we have to, you know, how fast do we have to jump? And it's just kind of like all hands on deck when we're super busy. And it's actually not that much money over 4 years, right? Frankly, to do a lot of work that we really need to do. So this really is, I'm going to be talking in the greater context about how we're supporting A to G. So this is actually going from this grant discussion to how we support our kids, you know, in the board policy decision to have everybody go A to G. And, you know, we've heard so much about kids need more support, teachers need more support. So there's that big word, support. And all the forms that support is needed, are needed. And I would suggest that it cannot be externalities. So Sheila Walker just talked about tutoring. Absolutely. Sheila, yes, totally makes sense. But also, if we're looking transformationally, tutoring is external. What happens in the classroom? What is happening in the classroom, teacher to student contact that is creating barriers that impedes learning, right? And we need to go back, way back past that, you know, 5th grade math, right? 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. We shouldn't be looking at the first quarter grades in 9th grade. We should be looking at 7th and 8th grader grades and taking care of those kids before they get to high school. We're talking transformational. What are the barriers? So I'm just going to be talking a little bit about the kinds of things where I believe I, as a trustee and a lifelong educator, right, school leader, we're talking about how we really create the landscape for kids to be successful. So in the plan, yes. Actually, all these things are very predictable. These are the kinds of things we've been doing all along. But if we continue to do the same things, are we going to get different results? I mean, we really, really have to think about this. Board, I really want us to think about this. What needs to be different? What needs to be transformational? Where is that lever that is going to kind of go in there with, because we can't afford to do everything. I mean, I offered tutoring at my high school, at the high school I ran for years, to hardly any avail. Kids do not want to stay extra time for tutoring. So one thing I think we should go back to, and I thank you, Dr. Armstrong, for adding that demographic chart with the, who, where is the need by ethnicity anyway. That's just not the only measure, but that was instructive for us. We have access to Youth Truth Survey data. Powerful, powerful data straight from the kids, slicing and dicing it every which way. We have that. What is the need? Tutoring's an answer that is in the plan, for example. But what is, that's the answer. What's the question? What do the kids need? What are they asking for? I bet they're not saying tutoring. I bet they aren't saying tutoring. I bet they're saying stuff like, my teacher listens to me, or it is interesting to me, or it makes sense in my life. That's where we need to change the teaching and learning, not adding externality like paying for test fees, which we should be. And actually we do with the free and reduced, I think there's still that test payment program from the state, maybe. So I'm looking for transformation. What are the barriers? And we need to go back to the kids. What are they telling us? We have that data. Santa Rosa City Schools we've participated in that data. Case Anna Mark knows all about it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the big deals. And so what's the need? What's the data tell us? And the other thing in terms of like a lever, we got to go to grading. What is going on with grading? We have many teachers have talked about this. Many teachers and directors have spent time on grading policies, grading practices, and we really haven't been able to touch that nugget, that institutional nugget that it lives with our grandparents. But grading is a lever that we need to be looking at as a district and change that policy. It's harmful, it's judgmental, it's not growth mindset. So I would like us to spend time on that. Math.
Trustee Fong, I had a question, I guess, to your point about tutoring. So if it's not something that students take advantage of, is there maybe something in the type of tutoring or some kind of supplemental education beyond classroom instruction that students might take advantage of? I know you've been working with this for some time, so that's the reason why I kind of wanted to stop and clarify what you were saying, something beyond tutoring.
You know, that is really an administrative type of question, answer in terms of our teachers and our staff to be working out. And many teachers just tutor their kids on their own. They just, you know, in all the little cracks of time that we have, they take the kid aside and just help that kid get through it. But really, we need just-in-time tutoring. We need a kid, somebody sitting by a kid's side in a math class when that kid stops. Full halt, stop. They don't get it. Teacher's going on with 26 more kids or 30 or 32 more kids. That kid is lost further and further behind. You're not going to pull that kid out and teach them fractions in an algebra class, right? So we will leave that because that's really a, you know, a district thing.
Okay.
Dr. Armstrong and her team, Anna and her team. So just, I made my point about math, you know, and what are the barriers? You know, I can think of a bunch of solutions, but that's not my role. My role is to urge and to paint a path for us to be bold, to transform how we do things. Teachers are working very hard and they're struggling under, I've said this so many times, 100-year-old institutional practices. I'll just throw something out there. We need a 7-period day. Not everybody's going to need a 7-period day. Seniors probably won't need it. They probably only need 4 or 5-period day. Maybe some 9th graders are going to need 7 periods plus tutoring. So we need to change up the way we do school. And this grant, Dr. Armstrong, absolutely, we need it. We could use it. We could use it 10 ways from Sunday, right? But I don't want to see us squander a little bit of money and not put us on a path that is changing how we do teaching and learning and free up what is going on in the classrooms and our systems for our teachers so they can really teach and spend time with kids. And actually, we're talking about, you know, we hear this often from teachers, reduce class sizes. Frankly, 2 or 3 kids per class, not going to make a difference at all. I think teachers are going to agree with me, and you probably do too. You know, so, okay, I'm going to stop. Obviously, I have a lot to say about this. I'm glad I'm talking to you at part 1, not at part 3 when we're ready to submit. But I want us to really think about this. And if I'm thinking about the 2 places where we need to enter is youth truth data, how does that inform what we do? And grading. A full-on system-wide, probably not elementary so much. They're already standards-based, I think. Secondary grading.
I just want to add like another shout out for the 7th period day. And to have that, like, I think my kid at Santa Rosa High is like heard that Carrillo has a free period at the very beginning of the day for kids to be able to check in with each other, do their homework, and kind of get ready. He's like, why don't we have those? And that's also a great place to have those built-in supports, you know, on campus during the regular school day for kids to be able to get that level of support. So I just think that 7th period day is really critical, and that could be a wonderful way of building in those supports. President Fong, Director Fong, I just want to thank you so much for, you know, really leading on this discussion. And I would just say that the last thing, you know, youth truth data is an awesome thing for us to launch off of. I can imagine this grant also supporting kind of like a youth truth at a local level, on the ground, site by site with kids, to really get a sense.
We have that data already. It's available to us.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. I know I know you're thinking about this. I know your directors are thinking about this. Our principals and our teachers are thinking about this, but where can we really help open up that path for people is at the board level. So fellow trustees, we need to dive in because A to G, we're not there. We haven't provided what we really need for people, for teachers who are frustrated, for kids who are frustrated, and we need to do better.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Fong. Other board members? Further discussion? One thing that I really want to add, maybe to build upon where I was going, things that we'd like to see and reaching out this year. I would also like to see a focus on finding a way to engage students at the middle school level so that they don't show up in ninth grade without the motivation, without feeling that excitement, that energy and being there ready to understand. So really it's more, when we talk about intervention, it's intervention at the earliest level. So that's the junior high level, the 7th grade going into 8th grade, and really kind of capturing, the students' attention, their energy, where they are, their interests. At that level, and not just a student. Again, this is the whole family. So I just wanted to push one last time on that, if we're talking about things that I'd like to see. And again, moving speed of light so that we can start implementing this year. All right. Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. We're looking forward to seeing this item return in the next few weeks with more supporting data, along with some of the suggestions that we discussed. So board coming back for more great discussion. This was a lot, and appreciate all of you coming at it from different angles, different perspectives and expertise. And thank you so much, Trustee Fong, for your push around mathematics. Okay, we are going to move on to agenda item, the F consent items. Continuance from our March 9th meeting, members of the public had requested polling agenda item F6, approval of superintendent's final decision on reclassification for California School Employee Association. Superintendent Trunnell, I'm going to turn it over to you for more details on this consent item.
Thank you. I also know that we had some individuals who were interested in speaking on the item. I believe we took names. I don't know if they are present this evening. And I'm happy to share. Wonder if you want to hear the public comment first or have me share first.
Let's have you share first. Is what I'm thinking is because, again, there were specific members who requested the item, but we're going back and trying to recapture where we were on at last month's meeting, and the comments that they actually provided comments specific to this agenda item, and I don't have that. I don't recall all of what was said.
Just before we move forward, do we need to take action on the other items that weren't pulled before we discuss this one?
Yes. Okay, so we're seeking a motion for approval of consent items 1 through 5, 7 through 9.
Do we need one because everybody's here? So it'd be, so I'll make a motion.
Make the motion.
Approve F2 through 5 and 7 through 9.
There we go. A second?
Second.
Oh. Moved by Trustee McCormick, seconded by Trustee Fong. We're ready for a vote.
Director McCormick,
Aye.
Director Fong,
Aye.
Director Manieri,
Aye.
Director De La Cruz,
Aye.
Director Flores,
Aye.
Director Medina, President Sheffield.
Aye. All right. Thank you, Superintendent Trunnell.
Yes, thank you. So for F6, this item is a part of a process that is embedded in our collective bargaining agreement with our CSEA classified employees. And when an employee has an interest in asking for a reclassification of their position, typically where the request includes a movement on the salary schedule from one range to another, they provide rationale for why that should happen. There is, per the collective bargaining agreement, a committee that is formed to review those requests. And in the end, the way that the language is written in the CBA, the recommendations from the panel or committee, after they have reviewed the information, after they have interviewed the individuals who submitted these requests, they present to the superintendent or designee their list and what was asked for and what their outcomes are. I took some additional time to ensure that I reviewed each of these requests. I reviewed job descriptions if they were available. I also looked intently at the salary schedules. I looked at the notes and outcomes from the panel. What I can tell you is the actions that I did take were made and based on what I could see from all of that research. That made sense. Other requests that were made include requests that really aren't for me to approve, but really should belong at the negotiations table. And so in that, I had to wade through thinking through that lens as well. Is this something that I would approve for one person? Or is this something based on the recommendations should really go to the table and be thought in a more global scale as far as the type of position? So the recommendations that come forward to me in the end or to my designee, so far the process has been that these come to the superintendent. It is written in the collective bargaining agreement that my decision or overall a decision in this process is final. There is no appeal after that. So I'm interested to hear if anyone wants to speak on any of these items.
Thank you so much for the clarification, Superintendent Trunell. Trustee Flores, you had a question?
Yeah, a question as you were explaining the process of this, Superintendent Trunell. So if these positions are only, contractually items that have to be negotiated, then why are they reviewed by the committee in the first place?
Because the process requires in the CBA for any requests to be reviewed. So that is the first step. After the requests are made, a panel must review the document, even if to say that based on what is provided, this belongs elsewhere, but they do have to provide a recommendation, whether it is a yes or a no.
So that's the only options they have. They don't have, this is not an item that needs to be negotiated at the table.
That's not their call. That's my call or my designee's call. They would not necessarily be looking through that lens, although they may have that perspective. That's not the recommendation that they would necessarily send forward. They could send notes on that, but that wouldn't be a part of their overall ruling, if you will.
So then what's the difference between the one you did say yes to and then the ones that you didn't say no? I mean, because they to me, I went through them, right? I couldn't find that lens. So could you explain that a little bit better?
Do you, I really would, are you asking me to go person by person? Because
No. Just, I mean, you approved one that I can see, right? And then the
Yes.
rest were denied. So can you just?
I approved, there were 3, I believe. Let me go back. Let me go into the notes. Well, the one on childcare assistance, that one really needed no action because the board had just taken action on January 12th. So there was nothing further for me to do. So technically that one was already approved by the board.
So the only action these folks have to get a pay increase in all of these categories is to negotiate through the CBA. Is that what I'm hearing?
So technically, yes, the point of the reclassification process is not to get higher pay. The point of the reclassification process is to, for an employee to advocate that there is something that has changed with their job. Not necessarily that they have added, 10 more students to their, their casework. Let's say the school enrollment increases by a certain amount, and now they are serving, 50 more kids, or they're processing a particular document or report that they already do. And now that there are more of those, it is significantly that their work has changed or shifted. And we take a look at that rationale and we do that case by case. There are, for instance, with the budget technician position, there were 2 submissions for that. We did look at what changed about their work, and I was able to approve that. However, there were others where they had the same exact submission because they worked together, I imagine, these individuals, because they were advocating sort of together but separately for their work. And based on the rationale that was given, I was not able to approve. And the committee also recommended that we not increase the salary range from one step to the next as a result of the rationale and interviews that were given.
And then who is in this committee?
So I'm not going to name the panelists, but through the CBA, I would have to pull it up. My apologies. Maybe Mike, can you assist me in the membership?
Yes.
There's one outside person I know, and then we have some internal people.
Okay, so look, we have principals, we have, a classified staff. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yes, yes, I can speak to that. The panel, I just had it. I'm looking at the appendix right now. The panel consists of 1 CSEA appointee, 1 human resources appointee, and 1 neutral party that is chosen by both CSEA and the district. And the neutral party shall not be an employee of the district.
My apologies. That's actually in the purpose of the cover. I apologize, Mike. I should have looked there too.
So I guess I'm not understanding why. I understand your point that you have a different lens, right? I just don't understand why the committee, right? A committee that has 1 classified appointee, 1 by the district, and an independent person came up with a different sort of resolution than what is being given to us here. So I guess my next question would be, are these going to be renegotiated this year or next year?
Yeah, so I can understand where you're coming from. I actually upheld the most of the recommendations of the panel. And so I did, well, I have to go back into my notes, but I did uphold most of the recommendations of the panel. And to your point about this process, this is actually a discussion that we would love to have with our CSEA labor partners. And also, as of right now, we don't have openers for this particular discussion item with CSEA.
So I guess all I'm saying is that this independent committee came out with a different sort of resolution to the no reclassification recommendation for all these different types. And I just have to say that, I know our classified staff work, their tails off, and especially during COVID. They mentioned here more than once that they feel like we don't appreciate them as much as we do. I just want to say that we do, and I just want to make sure that we are taking that we make sure that we understand why it is that you're recommending this, and that is not, that there's a process for this, just because I want to make sure that we are all on the same page by the time we vote, because I'm a little bit taken aback that, an independent panel came up with a different sort of resolution than you did, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation here, and it looks like somebody else may have a question.
I do want to just, to your point, Director Flores, I just want to take a moment now. I should have started with this, is that the outcomes of this decision in no way reflect our value of any of our members of our team. The representatives who put forward these requests are extremely valuable to us, and we absolutely appreciate the work that they do. And the outcome here is not a sign that we would think otherwise. There are other processes that we would have to move through in order for some of these decisions to be made that are not a part of the reclassification process.
Thank you.
Trustee De La Cruz.
Thanks. Thank you, Superintendent, for this explanation. I think it was really helpful to hear kind of the purpose of reclassification as not necessarily being kind of an opportunity to negotiate over pay. But I do think that it's a process that looks at, as you mentioned, changed circumstances and the way that we would value changed circumstances. And so I'm just wondering if there's a kind of a statement around what is the kind of function of reclassification. And then I think the other thing that just kind of is floating around in my head is everything has changed since COVID, I think especially for a lot of the administrative positions. And I'm wondering how, those same changed circumstances are identified or addressed in, if not a reclassification decision, then in other places. And how are we looking at these changes and these increased responsibilities for a lot of people in our systems through a holistic lens that's not just about reclassing people?
Yes, I'm going to ask Mr. Shepherd to speak to this a little bit, because we've been discussing this process and what we would like to recommend to improve this process.
Thank you, Superintendent Trinnell. I will add that under the guidelines, Appendix E of the CBA, the reasons for classification criteria are significant new job duties that are permanently added to the job or job description by the supervisor. And number two, significantly increased responsibilities other than increased workload have been permanently added to the position by the supervisor. So as sometimes can happen, as work needs to get done, sometimes we all know that work changes. Sometimes there's additions of the type of work. And sometimes, I, as a former site administrator, we can sometimes unknowingly diverge a little bit from the job description if we're trying to get things done in that we work together mentality. And there is ed code provision that if someone is working out of class 5 out of 15 days, we can upwardly adjust their pay and compensate employees. So that's for temporary additions, that's a more appropriate method. So I think our system needs to have some discussions around how work is assigned and distributed, and continue those discussions with our labor partners, so that if someone is given some increased duties, that we have that conversation. We use the job descriptions and we need to follow them. And of course, there's some related things that can be added, but I think the important term is significant changes, significant duties that are beyond the scope of the job. And so I think those are ongoing conversations. And I think we have some opportunity to have some of those discussions and even perhaps entertain some changes to this process or some clarification. Because certainly also in that criteria, it says reasons that are not a basis for a reclass would be longevity, excellence in work performance. Workload is often one that's misconstrued. I often, if someone, we all know we have more work than we can get done in a day. And for managers, we're not hourly employees, so we get our work done when we get our work done. But it's really important for our classified employees that we honor that they are 8-hour employees or whatever their length of time is, and that we don't hold them accountable to perform work beyond their work hours. And so if that's the case, so often that can be misconstrued. So I hope that was sufficient to answer your question.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that, Assistant Superintendent Shepherd. And, in particular, kind of demystifying some of the processes for people to access their rights in the case of change circumstances at a temporary, in a temporary way. I think my last question is, what is there any significant liability apart from kind of back wages that the district would handle if somebody were able to prove that they were working out of class?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd like to ask Deputy Superintendent Edson if he could assist with that.
Certainly, and Mr. Shepherd might be able to add to this as well. If that was found, then I don't know the time frame for that, right? But it would be taken, and the remedy would be that back pay for that time period as it was determined that we were either out of compliance or not acknowledging that additional work of an out-of-class employee.
Yeah, and I would like to add one form that could take would be certainly us being aware of the situation. That's key. And an employee that could be a conversation that starts with the employee and their supervisor. Another avenue which could be a grievance, but in my experience, typically these are handled through conversations, and it's really important that HR has regular conversations with managers to remind us all of job descriptions and duties that we're assigning, and just to be cognizant. But most of the time, it's not, like I said, in my experience, it is a recognition of, hey, we have this new work to do, and our employees are very giving. They want to help students. They want to advance the work of the organization. So people will knowingly take on work, and then down the road go, hey, wait a minute, this is more than I thought or more significant. So yes, sometimes there is some catch up, but I think if we continue to message and train our system, we can help with this process.
Thank you.
Other board members?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that I feel really uncomfortable going against a recommendation, against two recommendations here. One by our superintendent, because I trust you, Superintendent Trunell. And the other one is that this independent committee that their sole job was to look up the reclassification process, and this is what they came up with. So I'm having a hard time consolidating these two, schools of thoughts, just to let you know.
I don't think that what you see here, Director Flores, is the actual recommendations of the panel. But what you do see here is actually me upholding the majority of their recommendations, with the exception of, I think, one.
Maybe Superintendent Trunell, to go back to, where it began a little bit of the discussion at the appropriate time to address what might be, I don't know if it's a reclassification or if it's a salary increase, but what just for clarification, that this isn't the appropriate way to do it, and we
Correct.
We don't want to start any precedents here if we do have something that may involve negotiations with the union.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure, do we have the members of the public, unless there are further questions from the board? And I want to say that we have great employees in our district and we value everything they do, especially all of the unknowables, I guess, that we've seen pop up during the pandemic. It's just an example. And it sounds like maybe updating some of the job descriptions with any added responsibility that's been identified, and maybe as Assistant Superintendent Shepard had pointed out, entertaining some of changes, at the appropriate time, whether that's during the bargaining process as we move forward. I want to say that I really want to stress that we do value our employees and really do behind them for stepping up just over the last over this school year and definitely throughout the pandemic. Now I wanted to go to the public to see if there were the members who had requested to address agenda item F6, if they are available, that they spoke to the item.
Thank you, President Sheffield. Is this a 3-minute comment period?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I see some hands raised. There were a few people who wanted to have this item pulled. Is this comment period for only those people or for whoever raises their hand?
My understanding was it was for those who had requested the item if we're going on the continuance of our previous meeting.
Okay,
Public
I have those names, so I can bring them over for comment. So our first comment is Alicia Morrison.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello, members of the board. I'm here tonight regarding my request for reclassification and Ms. Trinell's decision to not approve it. My SRCS job title is Typist Clerk 4. ArtQuest identifies my position as ArtQuest Program Assistant, and Santa Rosa High School identifies this position as the ArtQuest Secretary. The Typist Clerk 4 job description does not accurately reflect the duties and responsibilities that come with this position. This has been noted by 2 different reclassification panels. In 2016, the panel stated they recommend a review of the typist clerk as a job title, as it does not appear to be relevant or recognized title. For my reclassification request, the panel stated the duties of this position are not aligned with typist clerk 4. This position is the only classified employee for the entire ArtQuest program. Duties performed are far outside the scope of typist clerk 4 job description. In addition to the vast clerical duties, this position functions more like a school site lead. Not 1, but 2 different panels brought in by SRCS to make recommendations have determined that typist clerk 4 is not the correct job description. However, Ms. Trinell is not supporting the panel's recommendation. The current description is inaccurate and misleading. This is unfair to potential employees, certainly not beneficial to ArtQuest, Santa Rosa High School, or Santa Rosa City Schools. I am the 4th employee in the space of 3 years. I am asking the board to respectfully disregard Ms. Trunnell's recommendation based on the fact she wasn't present in the interview process. I believe that were she present, she would have come to the same conclusion as the previous panels. I believe Santa Rosa City Schools wants to have accurate and fair job descriptions. I sincerely hope that you'll take this into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Melanie Rosales.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Melanie Rosales, and I am a library technician at Pioneer High School. I would like to explain why I have requested reclassification for the library tech position. When the district decided to implement the one-to-one Chromebook program at the end of the 2021 school year, library technicians were required to only check in and check out Chromebooks. That's part of our duty. We check We take care of all the books. We take care of all the textbooks, library books, all of those sorts of things. As the school year began, the new school year began, the Chromebooks were now part of our job. Along with the addition of the Chromebooks, all of our current job duties were unchanged. Chromebooks, unlike books, require a lot of attention. No one would have ever thought the one-to-one Chromebook program could have required so much attention and daily need in the libraries. The library techs have worked closely with the IT department to come up with a solution to make the one-to-one program run smoothly. The end result has benefited our staff and students and was greatly appreciated. If the library techs are not reclassified, the one-to-one Chromebook program will move back to the IT department, which is already overwhelmed with many behind-the-scenes Chromebook duties. Staff and students no longer would have help with their Chromebook needs on a daily basis. The libraries, as well as the IT department, want to support the staff and students. The library is a natural fit to the one-to-one Chromebook program to ensure that staff and students have their Chromebook needs met every school day. I'm asking the board to vote in favor of our reclassification. The panel recommended that we were out of our class of duties. We don't work with Chromebooks, but it was a natural fit for the school day. Students come to our libraries. They rely on us for their daily needs. We're there for them every day. We have Chromebooks needs all day long in the library. If it goes back to IT, the students will wait weeks before they're able to get their Chromebooks back. They're breaking on a daily basis. If the board feels that they do not have enough information about the library technicians and all we do with our new duties, please consider delaying your vote on this matter so that we can provide you with additional information. Thank you for your time, and I hope you were able to receive our letter and explain everything from the board and from us.
Thank you. Next is Katie Loomis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Dear members of the board and Superintendent Trudell, I am writing in support of approving Alicia Morrison's reclassification recommendation by the panel from Typist Clerk 4 to Senior Secretary. The Office of the Superintendent has declined to uphold the recommendation of the district's appointed panel. The SRCS board has already recognized the scope and magnitude of running a magnet program for the arts by granting the ArtQuest program a full-time program coordinator and typist clerk, known within ArtQuest as the program assistant and as the AQ secretary within Santa Rosa High School. Let us now recognize that the scope of the job duties performed by our program assistant are far beyond the duties of a typist clerk. 2 reclassification panels agreed. In 2016, the panel stated, the panel further recommends a review of the typist clerk as a job title, as it does not appear to be a relevant or recognized title. This year, the current panel stated that the duties performed are far outside of the scope of the typist clerk 4 job description. If this assessment by the panel does not show evidence of significant new job duties, as indicated by the Office of the Superintendent, then what will? Having been with ArtQuest since August of 2021, it is already clearly evident that the current description of typist clerk 4 inaccurately and misleadingly reflects the actual job duties performed. As the only classified staff member in ArtQuest, Ms. Morrison is integral to the daily operation of the ArtQuest program. In order to ensure the retention of qualified and committed classified staff, it is imperative that SRCS accurately reflects the correct job description to appropriately and fairly compensate work performed. Let's be honest, those two are tied together. Classified staff are integral to the district and site. Simply put, without them, our school sites could not function. In conclusion, I ask that you uphold the panel's recommendation by approving Alicia Morrison's reclassification from typist clerk 4 to senior secretary to accurately reflect her job duties and responsibilities. Thank you for your time and consideration in this important matter. And I also want to say that my name is Katie Loomis and I'm the ArtQuest program coordinator. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Joanna Kiesel or Keisel.
Hi, my name is Joanna Kiesel. I am also a library technician 2 at Santa Rosa High School. First, I just wanted to say that Superintendent Turnell said that she was upholding all except for one of the decisions made by the panel. There are actually 5 that were recommended for reclassification that she recommended against. I wanted to speak about the Chromebook tasks. We're not just checking Chromebooks in and out every day. We are troubleshooting for students. We are resetting keyboards. We are checking to see whether or not the Chromebook screens are cracked. We're checking them for damages. We're assisting students with password issues. This is not about the increased workload, which is significant. However, this is about the troubleshooting work that we're doing, the significant IT time that we are spending on these Chromebooks. At Santa Rosa High School alone, almost 200 Chromebooks have been repaired, updated, charged, and fixed in general by library technicians. They sat waiting for an IT tech for months because their workload is tremendous. Our workload is also tremendous, but our students' needs are more important. We put our students first as classified staff, as library staff. We are required, well, not required, but we desperately want our students to have what they need. They need Chromebooks in order to do their schoolwork. Without those things, students will fail. We have seen it happen. Students have broken Chromebooks. We can't fix every issue, and so they go without. How do they complete their homework? How do they complete their classwork? We don't have enough Chromebooks to give them a brand new one every time their keyboard gets set to something other than English or Spanish. If we can just say, okay, great, and fix it right there, that's less work that the IT has to do. It gets the Chromebook right back into the hands of the students immediately. I did write a letter to the board. I hope that you've all been able to take time to read that letter. And I'm just asking you to understand that this reclassification for me personally was not about the money. It's about our work being recognized and about everybody understanding what we do and how we're supporting our students. And I just really appreciate the time that everybody took to take a look at these things. And I would ask you to seriously consider supporting us in our reclassification efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. President Sheffield, among those who asked this item be pulled, those were all the hands that are raised.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to bring it back to the board to see if there are other questions, further discussion on this. I see Trustee Fong's hand raised.
Is there another process by which we redo job descriptions?
Yes, there is.
And it's not this process?
No, this is job description revisions are done through negotiations.
Okay, so it seems like some of these need to go through that process.
That's what I stated, yes. And for the record, since I'm speaking, the speaker is correct. It was 5. I went back and counted.
All right,
I approved one set, yes.
So, oh, I see Trustee Flores' hand raised.
I mean, Trustee Fong asked the question that I was going to ask, but this is difficult because what I'm seeing here is not having all the information ahead of time, right? So we're in a place to decide whether or not to approve what you put forward here. I think it's important to establish that one, there is a process for reclassification, right? Two, if someone's using that reclassification process in not appropriately, it would behoove us to make sure that it doesn't go through that process, because then we're left in this position, right? Or you're left in this position to veto or deny that decision. So to me, that's a little bit backwards, right? Only those reclassification job descriptions or jobs that need to be reclassified need to go to the process. And then once they go through that reclassification process, and if they get approved or denied, right, then you they're sent to the board here. Right now, I hear you, Anna, that they were accepted and you're denying them for a particular reason, but it's to me it's a little bit backwards that we're sending these jobs forward to the process and then having to deny these positions or these reclassifications at this level. It's a little bit backwards to me. So I don't know. I think we need to look systemically to see what we can change so we're not put in this position. I think this is something that we talked about last time with Dr. Kitamura when we had something similarly happen, that a few positions were reclassified by the committee, and then the district had no response, and then therefore they were accepted, right? So I just want to make sure that this process is cleaned up via negotiations or whatnot, but I think it needs to be cleaned up. And if it's a job that doesn't have to go through the reclassification process, that it gets stopped at that level, not at this level. So that's just my 2 cents, and I think I'm leaning towards supporting what these folks have said in the public comments.
I am following you, and I'm in agreement with you. But I guess where I'm at, Trustee Flores, is updating some of the job descriptions is necessary, absolutely. And I'm concerned that maybe this isn't really the way that the process should be done, but I'm also really concerned about what the potential precedents that would be set in approving recommendations outside of the negotiating process. So I don't know, Superintendent Trunell or Assistant Superintendent Shepherd, what would be the ramifications if we were to make exceptions? Clearly exceptions, in my opinion, should be made with examples that I've heard. But what would we be doing if we would make these exceptions moving forward without going through the correct process?
Yeah, so I think one is, and Assistant Superintendent Shepherd, please jump in as well. I think there does need to be a review of the process itself. I think we agree that there needs to be a step in that direction needs to be taken. Some of the asks of the requests were taking a position, for example, requesting that a position be reclassed to another position that doesn't exist at any other school, but actually only resides at the district office level, for example. Another request was to reclass a position that no other middle school actually had. And in this case, the school already has this particular position. So it would actually be giving a school 2 of them. So we have to look at all of those angles when we're making these decisions. And the decision that that the board may take, or the action that the board may take tonight, doesn't mean that the conversation ends. There is definitely some follow-up work that we have to do based on these recommendations this evening.
And I will add that, that we are obligated to have a uniform salary schedule and job duties that are that are adhere to the negotiated job descriptions. So where we typically, a process I'm familiar with would be when it's time to look at a job description, we would do an in-depth analysis of the work being performed. And then we would do a comparison of like districts, similar size, similar, and we would kind of do a comparison to see where we fall within the region, within like ADA, like composition as best we can. And we would kind of draw those comparisons. And then that information would be taken to the table for those discussions for potential changes. So I think that's because, to Superintendent Trinnell's point, if we change one position at one school, the argument then we would not have equality, which is essential because the job descriptions have to be equally applied throughout the district. And so we really need to have a holistic approach on how we apply those and the ramifications of each decision. How does that impact the organization and other positions of the same work? For example, like I spoke earlier, I as a principal might be assigning work to my library tech that is far different than the other library techs around the district. So that's where we need to kind of pull back and take a look at how are we applying these duties. And we may have to pull some duties back. We may have to, because schools are different, but the work needs to be equitable as far as the level of work being performed.
Thank you. Trustee Medina.
Thank you. One of the questions that I had, and this is in particular to the library techs, it sounds like some of the work or some of the changes, it feels like they're temporary, related to the pandemic and everything that we had to deal with that. And I'm wondering if we look at a possible temporary reclassification potentially to something within IT, that is maybe some of the work that they're doing that's specific for a short period of time, that they do that work, and then once the new conditions that are causing that extended work change, then they go back to their existing position. Something that could be done with like maybe a letter of agreement. Have we looked at anything like that? Is that something that's possible? Because I don't think that all of these changes are forever changes, which are usually something that's part of a full-on reclassification or a spec update. So if anybody could add insight to that, I'd appreciate it.
My understanding, and I'll lean on any one of my team for this, my understanding is once we have moved on a particular salary schedule, there is no retraction of that unless that were to be negotiated. And I don't know if that would be something that a union would want to do on a temporary, but I don't have the history here per se.
Yeah, that's why I'm not saying like this, the library tech classification wouldn't change. It would remain its existing classification, but the individual that's the library tech would temporarily be moved to potentially an IT classification or something that does that similar job that likely gets paid different because it's much different work, I would imagine. But the agreement with the bargaining unit would be something that change for that individual for a short period of time. I imagine something like that could be done if the unit is in agreement, but I don't know. That's what I'm asking for clarification.
Go ahead, Mr. Shepherd.
So that, Director Medina, that's what you're speaking to really is the ed code provision for paying someone working out of class. And so there is a provision, but that starts wading into negotiations because there may be different interpretations of the work being performed and is it truly out of class. So that's where we would discuss those issues if we did not have agreement between labor and management. And typically we work those out pretty amicably, but it really depends on, it's situational. And it might be, yes, you were performing this work, it's a higher classification. And for a period of 15 days, okay, we're going to back pay you for the differential between the two ranges. And then either the discussion then gets more down the road. What's this? Is there a solution? What can we work out together to either have the work reassigned, or maybe it was a temporary thing. For example, if a senior secretary was let's say out for 2 or 3 weeks, and a clerk was assuming a major portion of their duties, that would be a case where it's a temporary thing. There's ed code. We have an agreement ahead of time that we're going to pay that person to work out a class.
In addition, we have done MOUs previously when we've added temporary duties to a particular position. And we have done this in regard to COVID. So there is a sunset time frame for that extra pay.
Okay, Trustee Fong. You're still on mute. 3 times.
I really have to appreciate our employees, Alicia at ArtQuest and our library tech, I really get that. Thank you for all the work, because so many just work outside what used to be. But that being said, I want to just warn us that as board members that the reason why this is consent is because really it's an administrative type. This is an administrative piece of work. And so that's why it's on consent. And if we're changing policy, then we really should be supporting policy that looks at reclassification, right? Is where we should be living. But I want to make sure that we've highlighted how jobs are changing. And so as jobs are changing and we're asked to do different things or more things, it's system-wide, right? Some more acute than others right now. So I just want to make sure that we pay that kind of attention to the human beings that work with us and work in our system. And we also have to realize that our superintendent and our assistant superintendent, this is new. So if we're talking ArtQuest going back years, they don't have that history. So it's our systems. Let's just keep paying attention to our systems and make sure our policy supports how we take care of the human beings in our system. Is just my 3 cents overall.
I really like that, Trustee Fong. And just to add, I want to really capture the passion of our employees and the work that they do and their desire to continue working in the district. Trustee McCormick?
Oh, one more thing, sorry. And thank you guys for hanging in there, because it was, you hung in there really late, and then tonight too. So appreciation and apologies.
Trustee McCormick?
Yeah, I just very much in line with what Trustee Fong just expressed. And I want to be careful that we're not getting too far down in the weeds here on this. And I just need to say that I very much appreciate all the communication that we did get from our classified employees, and them expressing very specifically how their jobs have changed and why they're building arguments towards this reclassification. And I appreciate that it is frustrating when you think you're following process to advocate for change on something that personally affects you and your ability to be successful at the job you're doing every day, and then to find out that that might not be the process. Mm-hmm. And so work has been done and then frustrations ensue. And so I very much appreciate that and apologize for that. But on the flip side, I also appreciate that our district and our cabinet and our leadership is trying really, really hard to stay within the rules and honor the negotiating process with our union. And I think that is also very, very important. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's got us in a bit of a pickle here, because I think all of us feel strongly on both sides of this. And so I just want to acknowledge both sides, and that we do need, I appreciate Superintendent Trunell, you saying that just because when we make a decision on this tonight, it doesn't mean the conversation isn't over, and that obviously we need to take a look at this process and make sure everybody's on the same page about this process going forward. And so I'd appreciate hearing more about that in the future as we proceed. And then with that, with all respect all the way around, I would like to make a motion that we approve the superintendent's final decision of reclassifications for California School Employee Association, Chapter 75, SCA 75, Administrative Assistant, Middle School, Budget Technician, Middle School Technician, Health Tech, Human Resources Recruiting Technician, Library Technician 2, Account Clerk 3, Senior Secretary, Typist Clerk 4, Noon Yard Duty, Child Care Assistant, and Child Care Lead, which is F6.
One more question before we approve, or before we vote, sorry, or second. Is this something that we can move into our negotiation openers and just kind of accept and recognize all the work that has been done in this process and put it in the right place, as, you know, folks who are really respecting that work?
At this time, this is not an opener that we are allowed to bring forward on this particular topic. So we will have to approach CSEA with the potential and rationale. But at this time, we would have to bring that forward as a question.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been seconded. I do see Trustee Flores. I did want to acknowledge your hand.
Thank you. And I have to say this before we vote, because then I don't have a chance to say this, but I have two things to say. You know, in terms of Chromebooks, I think we're going to, you know, Chromebooks have changed our lives. You know, we're going to need Chromebooks for the rest of our lives. I don't think it's a temporary sort of, you know, thing that is happening. I just want to say that because I've seen that, especially if we're going to a one-to-one world here. And also, you know, I will cast my vote to protest, to make sure that, you know, our system, and this is a systemic sort of protest that I'm doing, needs to change. I hear what the board is saying, right? And I think I'll be in the minority here when I cast my vote, but I just want to make sure that we start that process as a systemic sort of change. So I just wanted to say that before we start the voting process.
Yeah, and I respect that, Trustee Flores, you know, and I also have experienced and seen how, you know, a 7-year-old beats on a Chromebook. And I, you know, it happens. You try as a parent, but it happens. Let's see. So it was moved by Trustee McCormick, seconded by Trustee Medina. I believe we're ready for a vote.
Director McCormick.
Aye.
Director McKenna.
Aye.
Director Manieri.
Aye.
Director De La Cruz.
No, on the same grounds as Director Flores, respecting all of the work that has been done and recognizing that this is a systemic challenge, and mostly just in joining the protest of the bureaucracy that needs to shift.
Thank you.
Director Fong.
Aye.
Director Flores.
No.
President Sheffield.
Aye. All right, the motion passes, and it does sound like we have some thinking to do as we move forward on items like these. All right, motion passes. We are going to, that clears up consent item F6. We are going to move on to our G items. And thank you again, Superintendent Trunell, and thank you again, Assistant Superintendent Shepard. G items, G1, seeking approval of minutes of the regular board meeting held on February 23rd, 2022.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Second.
All right, moved by Trustee Fong, seconded by Trustee De La Cruz.
Director Fong,
Aye.
Director De La Cruz,
Aye.
Director Manieri,
Aye.
Director McCormick,
Abstain.
Director Flores,
Aye.
Director Medina. I believe Director Medina may be absent at the moment. President Sheffield,
Aye.
and that's everyone.
Great. All right, motion passes. Moving on to our H items, board member requests for information. Board members, any requests for information at this time? Okay, seeing none.
I have one request for information.
Please.
I would love to have some statement about the process for community-based organizations to apply to be an approved after-school program, and to see if that's possible to do as a technical assistance kind of seminar. I've heard from a number of CBOs that are really excited about being included in this community schools model that I know we are trying hard to develop, and who are also expressing a lot of challenges with that process of being approved as a CBO for an after-school program. So I would just love some additional information, and if that is in the form of a technical assistance webinar or something similar, a guide or a flow chart, that would be sufficient for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee De La Cruz. Other board members, requests for information? Trustee Fong?
I am really here. And I would like to request again, and I'm sure it's in the pipeline, but going along with A to G grant, the data that goes back to how our kids are doing, which kids are doing, which kids aren't doing, broken down by all the usual demographic things that we need to know, and the youth truth data that will inform our work with A to G. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure you're already working on it.
And I'm going to put a fire underneath that too. That's what I'd like to add. All right. Information items are listed in the agenda packet. And before we adjourn, Superintendent Trunell, any last minute announcements?
No, just thank everyone for being here and for being very conscientious and very thorough in how we make our decisions.
Thank you. And thank you all. Everybody have a great evening. Meeting's adjourned.